Hello YouTube! Today we are going to try and build a deck to break into the TCG meta. So this is going to be a little bit of insight on deck building theory and how I approach putting together a deck when trying to win an event. So what are the problem cards in the TCG meta? What problem are we trying to solve? Well, some of the best cards currently being played, Artifact Scythe, is definitely being played as a win condition in a lot of the new punk strategies. Link decks in general just are always going to make this card. So we don't want a card that auto loses to Scythe. We need a deck that can play around this. The other card that is, in my opinion, the biggest problem card of the format is Mystic Mine, because Mystic Mine is being played to counter the Scythe decks. So what we need is a deck that beats both Mystic Mine and Artifact Scythe. We also need a deck that doesn't lose to Dimensional Barrier, because this is being played in every deck right now, at least in the side deck, and some duelists are even choosing to main it. So yeah, it's something we don't want to fall victim to, just having one type in our extra deck. So what are some other cards that we need to be wary of? I have to say Sword Soul is definitely a contender. Vishuddha, removing one big monster from our board, is pretty much something we always have to be aware of. And yeah, I think if we can build a deck that covers the bases on these cards, we're going to be pretty well positioned against the meta. Alright, so before we get any further, there are a few cards that I put in pretty much every dueling deck in the TCG, and those are going to be Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, followed by Called by the Grave. And these are just kind of a meta choice. Some side deck cards we definitely want to play as well. We can just get them out of the way. We want to include Dimensional Barrier for ourselves. And I really like Anti-Spell Fragrance. This card is so good against Despia and the Adventurer piles. So yeah, this card is just a card we're automatically going to throw into our deck. Speaking of the Adventurer engine, it is an engine I want to play in like our deck to beat the meta. And yeah, this is meta, but specifically because Dracoback is an in archetype out to Mystic Mine, and Rites of Eremacer is one of like the best cards in the game, so having access to this engine is something that I consider part of the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. So yeah, I'm definitely going to throw that in, as well as 3 of the Water Enchantress. Another card that would be really interesting to have access to is Foolish Burial, because it's another copy of Enchantress, and if we can find an engine that fits in 40 cards and also uses Foolish Burial, that seems like a good proposition for us. So if we go into the Punk Synchro lines, we're going to fall victim to Artifact Scythe, and hand traps in general very, very strong against that strategy. So I don't really want to play like a Punk Synchro deck or something that relies on the extra deck, since I really don't want to lose to Artifact Scythe, which is being played in the other adventure decks. We want to beat the other adventure decks, and we need to beat Mystic Mine, so we want a deck that also has Mystic Mine outs. And the deck that comes to mind is actually Eldlich. Eldlich is an engine that allows us to set a bunch of cards that, you know, we're pretty much going to be able to make like Griffin plus some back row, and that'll give us play through Artifact Scythe. But also Conquistador is a really nice in-archetype out to Mystic Mine that we have a lot of copies of. This is a pretty decent engine for other reasons as well, since we can use it to tutor out the Necroworld Banshee using the Elixir of Scarlet Sanguine, and that gets us access to the 1 copy of Zombie World in our side deck, which is very powerful against the Flawondery strategy, and that's another deck we need to be aware of, and a deck that's specifically really good against Eldlich. So we found our archetype and our supplementary engine, and so what cards can be used really well by both of these archetypes? The first one that comes to my mind is Magician's Soul. Magician's Souls is really good in the Rites of Eremacer decks because it gets you access to 2 spells to pop, but if you send the Eldlich cards with souls, it's just a ton of value. So yeah, the 2 Magician Souls, I am going to put in Selene, since we're going to have spellcasters. Selene is going to be in the deck no matter what, and of course Illusion of Chaos to supplement this engine. Illusion of Chaos allowing us to put back our bricks and get better cards if we need to. Yeah, this looks like a pretty good core. We are playing Eldlich, and so we have access to certain cards that are just incredibly powerful, and I see no reason not to play 3 copies of Skill Drain. This is our just like bomb card that allows us to have an edge against the meta if we draw it going first, and going second, it's pretty good too. So the rest of our deck can either be one of 2 things, in my opinion. We either play a normal summon engine like the Cyverse gadget, trying to go into like a normal summon equals full combo kind of gameplay style, or we could use the Branded Fusion engine, giving us access to a Mirror Jade. So those are the two paths that we can take the deck from here. So because we're playing the Magician's Soul and the Adventure Engine, I do want to have access to Link monsters, and I don't really want to play Branded Fusion since it locks us into fusions and limits our extra deck. So what are we trying to get out of the extra deck here? Well, we're definitely playing Access Code Talker as a win condition, and we're playing Eldlich, so we can basically play any cards we want. I'm interested more so in making Decode Talker Heatsoul. I think this is a really nice new boss monster that we can make in these style of decks because it kind of fills the same role as Verte, like a card you end on, and it nets you a lot of advantage turn after turn, drawing cards, and helps you get into your other engines. So it's really interesting. There are a lot of ways we can go into Heatsoul, and it's mostly through using generic Cyverse monsters. So I'll probably play Cyverse Gadget as our normal summon, since this card, it's just a pretty much one card Heatsoul. It's like 1.5 card Heatsoul. Since we can't use the Link Disciple Devotee combo anymore, that requires us to not summon any Link 3 or higher, and that kind of puts Heatsoul out of the question. So playing Cyverse Gadget is still fine though. It can special summon a level 2 or lower from the graveyard. So to facilitate this, we're going to go ahead and use Effect Veiler. We also have Magician's Souls, so a decent number of targets, and I will play one copy of Dotscaper. Since this is kind of like the fourth copy of Cyverse Gadget, since its effects are only once per duel though, playing one copy, it just makes a lot of sense. And we landed on exactly 40 cards with 20 monsters and then 20 back row, and I do like this ratio a lot. Next, we're going to fill out the Heatsoul engine. So the best card, thank you DFG in chat, is Splash Mage. Splash Mage turns any 2 Cyverse into 3 Cyverse, and we can summon back our Cyverse Gadget. So Cyverse Gadget does need a Link 1 to go into. We could just use Lingaribo. It's kind of multifaceted since this has a great effect on its own right, negating traps, but any level 4 or lower Cyverse can go into that. The Cyverse Gadget is sent to Graveyard and specials a token, which we can turn the 2 into Splash Mage, special back the Cyverse, and boom, Decode Talker Heatsoul. Beautiful. Now, we have other ways to go into it too, even with the Adventure Engine, using the Link Spider for the token, and Space Insulator, which is a generic Link monster that just takes any 2 monsters, and it can turn into a Cyverse. So yeah, that's pretty good. We have a lot of extra deck room, as you can see, and not a lot of engine requirements for extra deck. I think having access to either Link Kuriboh or something similar sounds pretty nice since we have so many level 1s in this deck. Link Kuriboh turning into a Cyverse is also something that we could consider playing. We could also consider Relinquished Anima, which is a interaction with the opponent, and it's a spellcaster, so it has crossover synergy with Selene the Queen. That's also something we can consider. I do also definitely want to play as many Charmers as we can fit in, Ausa being especially good right now with all the punks in the meta and the Regulus that could be in your opponent's graveyard. We can easily make this with our Adventurer token. We also want to make sure we're playing Lina the Lustrious. Since we have so many light monsters in this deck, we can easily play Dark the Dark Charmer, and if we wanted to, we could even play Area the Water Charmer, but I don't know if that's really as important. I think these 3 should cover enough of the meta where we'll be able to always summon something back. So next, let's fill out the rest of our side deck. We definitely want Nibiru. Nibiru, a very good hand trap right now. I think this card's highly underrated. It's definitely back in the meta, and we want to have access to it in case we are playing against big combo decks with a lot of negates. And then there's one card in particular I just love playing in Eldlich decks. It's a card that you can only really play in this deck, but it should definitely be in your Eldlich lists. That card is Lava Golem. Yes, so Lava Golem them, you have plenty of non-normal summon special summons that can hit the field, and so yeah, this is a great way to deal with those wide boards, and after they get Lava Golem for a lot of these punk decks, it's really hard for them to come back, so I do really like Lava Golem included, and we are missing quite a bit of back row removal, so we are going to at least have to have Harpy's Featherstorm, but ideally, we do get some Twin Twisters in this side deck. I'm thinking maybe the Zombie World, the Necro World Banshee. We don't have enough ways to send it to Graveyard to consider this engine. If we were playing maybe like we did find Foolish Burial, if we were playing like some way to directly send this from our deck other than just the Eldlixir, this would be a little more considerable, but to be fair, I don't think we have enough ways to trigger this, and I'm going to actually remove it to make sure that we find more back row removal, and that card for me is going to be Twin Twister at 2. So this side deck is going to change based on your locals if you're choosing to play a deck like this. The event that you're playing in, your side deck should always be different, but I know that the event that I'm playing tonight with this deck is probably going to have a lot of back row decks, a lot of Mystic Mine and Sky Striker, Flowanderies, and Twin Twister is really good in all of those matchups, while also we have plenty of discard fodder. So I think this, for my locals, is going to be correct, and you're going to have to assess your tournament accordingly. If there's going to be a lot of one specific deck like Sword Soul, you may want to consider Token Collector. It just completely depends on your meta. So this deck has a lot of really interesting synergies. We can equip the Draco back to any of the golden lands since they spawn as effect monsters, and we don't really have an incredible matchup against Flowanderies. That's probably one of the hardest decks for us to beat, but we do have outs to the barrier statue. The Golden Lord can send it away, that's really nice, and then we can also special the Wandering Griffin Rider. If we're going second, sometimes even just setting skill drain and like passing on a few cards is pretty good. This card is just incredibly good against Flowanderies. So I'm like making concessions to that matchup, but it's not unwinnable. We have a lot of tools, and our deck is fine-tuned to beat the Scythe decks and the Mystic Mine decks pretty effectively. So the core of our deck is done. We have a few spots extra in our extra deck, and so we're going to use those to hedge against other matchups. I think Nightmare Unicorn is a well-rounded card. Since we have so many ways to get into a Link 3, this could just deal with problems that we may not have foreseen. You could play definitely Halka Fibrax in this deck, but with only 6 main deck tuners, none of which I want to normal summon, I think it's fine to go without, but I wouldn't fault you for adding it into these slots. One card that I'm going to add is Underworld Goddess of the Close World. Underworld Goddess is a pretty interesting out to the Psychic End Punisher, which is a really problematic card for this deck. I don't think we have a really good out for it, so having one in our extra deck is a nice tool at our disposal. Yeah, so the Underworld Goddess, a really good card in her own right, but yeah, absolutely love having this card available to us. I'm also going to play Decode Talker. This has a pretty heavy restriction on it where you can only summon Cyverse for the entire turn that you use this card, and that is going to be a bit of a downside to it. However, it is nice because if you do have like Cyverse Gadget, sometimes you can just go right into this, into Access Code, and it kind of completes the last bit of damage you need. It's also really good because we can summon it off of Heatsoul when our life points are low, and it can summon something back from the graveyard. So I think Transcode is considerable, but again, these are just tech spots. And in that last line, we're going to go with Artemis the Moon Maiden. Artemis has pretty limited utility in this deck, but taking a level 4 lower spellcaster means that if we normal summon Water Enchantress, we can turn it in to the Artemis Moon Maiden, banish the Enchantress, get ourselves Rites of Aramacer. That's 2 monsters on the field, plus the Fateful Adventure, which we can use to get a 3rd monster on the field, and we can turn those 3 monsters using the Space Insulator plus the Link Spider into Heatsoul. So it's just another like kind of fix the gaps. It also yeah, it's another light in graveyard if we're trying to fill up the graveyard for access code. I might change these last 4 spots as the tournament goes on, but this is the deck that I think will be really good against the current meta. I'm going to play this deck at Locals tonight, where we have a really meta group of people, probably going to be between 40 and 60 players at Locals, all playing good decks, and I will let you guys know how it does. Hello YouTube, so I just got back from Locals, and I played this list card for card, and we had a 5-round Locals. The deck did really well. It honestly did everything that we were talking about that I'd hoped it would do. There were only a few changes that I made. I couldn't find a Dotscaper, so I added in Illegal Knight, the adventure support card, and I'll be honest, Illegal Knight was very good. In fact, it was so good, I'm probably just going to permanently add it to the deck. And then there's one other change that I'm going to make, one other card, but I'll discuss that in the round 5 summary. So round 1, I played against Galaxy Eyes, and they made me go first. I drew Skill Drain, so yeah, that was game. The game did go pretty quickly. He made me go first both games, and my deck is entirely intending to go first, so it was an advantage, and we ran with it. In round 2, I played against Striker Mystic Mine, and we had a really great match, honestly. Game 1 was like 20 minutes long, very grindy. I managed to banish his rays, and after a while, I flipped Skill Drain and was able to gain advantage until I won Game 1. Game 2, I went first. He made me go first, and I didn't really expect that, so I sided out the Skill Drains, and I didn't really set up a good board. He was able to break my board in record time. Game 3, we were really close to time. I went first, and I set up a very decent board, including Link Karibo, so he couldn't attack me directly. He used Mystic Mine, attempted to break my board, did a pretty good job of it, did a little bit of damage, and then I was able to break the Mystic Mine with Conquistador, one of the reasons we chose to play Eldlich. And I did have enough actions available to me to win due to the time rules, but I did set up a ton of damage and was even able to set up a lethal setup, and I would have seen the line if I did have more time. So a bit of a time scramble, but a very great match. Round 3, I played against Salad Adventure, Salamangreat Adventurer token, an interesting deck, and his goal was to make Heatsoul, my deck also making Heatsoul. I was just able to do it a little more efficiently, and my Eldlich cards being like a great grind game did actually win the day. I Haquero'd one of his Salamangrates from Graveyard. Round 4, I played against Dragon Link. Dragon Link was very, very difficult, a strong duelist, and he saw a lot of adventure cards, not a lot of dragon cards, and we had a really awesome match. I was able to win. It was a really interesting exchange. I went into Dark, the Dark Charmer, and targeted a card in his graveyard. He banished it with Snow as cost, and then I was able to chain Haquero, banishing the Snow. He had no cards left in graveyard and an Access Code on the field. I was able to make an Access Code of my own, so I had Access Code plus Eldlich, which was boosted. My opponent, on resolution of the Access Code effect, used Effect Failure on it, and then I linked into a Lina the Light Charmer, bringing back the effect failure from my opponent's graveyard and going into Unicorn to deal the last bit of damage for game. So it was a really great game there. And then round 5, I played against Sword Soul. Sword Soul, we had a great match. I was able to win game 1, game 2, he blew me out. And then game 3, I had a lethal setup where I had Adventure Token Griffin and then Lina the Light Charmer. I special summoned his Ecclesia from the graveyard, but I did not have any spellcasters in my graveyard. So the change that I'm going to make is I need to play Halka Fibrax in this deck. Adding Halka Fibrax to the extra deck would have allowed me to summon Effect Veiler from my deck, go into Selene Access Code, and that would have been lethal. So we definitely could have gone undefeated in this tournament, but I did go 4-1. It was a great showing with the deck, and we played against a wide range of meta. We were able to break multiple Mystic Mines, and we didn't lose to Scythe. Overall, very happy with the performance, and I'll definitely play this deck again. Thank you guys so much for watching the whole video. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great rest of your day.